Okay, let's dive in. The 14th and 15th centuries, this era just completely reshaped the world, didn't it? This whole period of European expansion.
It really did. An unprecedented global push. And when you look the sources, you see it wasn't just wanderlust. There were some very powerful forces at play.
Right, not just let's see what's out there. What were the main drivers?
Well, three big things jump out. First, those traditional overland trade routes to Asia. They were getting harder to use, more expensive, sometimes blocked entirely.
Okay, so a practical problem. What else?
Second, you've got new technology, better ships, improved navigation tools, stuff that basically made these long, dangerous sea voyages actually feasible, or at least, more survivable.
Made it possible to even think about going further.
Exactly. And third, don't underestimate the religious angle. Christian monarchs had this, well, powerful ambition to convert other peoples around the world. It was a mission for them.
So combining all that, the big goal became finding new sea routes, direct routes, to what they called Indy.
Precisely. And India wasn't just India as we know it today. It was basically this catch-all term for the rich coasts of Asia, full of spices, silks, wealth. Find a way there by sea, bypass the old routes. That was the prize.
And Portugal really led the charge initially, didn't they?
They were the first out of the gate, systematically exploring down the African coast. You always hear about Prince Henry the Navigator.
Right, though he wasn't actually sailing the ships himself.
No, but he was crucial. He financed the voyages, pushed the strategy. Early on, it was partly about fighting Muslim powers in North Africa, but very quickly it also became about trade. Gold supplies for ships.
And they set up those factorages. Tell us a bit more about those.
Yeah, the factored-ins, think of them as fortified trading posts, usually a warehouse, some housing for staff, maybe a small fort for protection, relatively small footprint initially.
So not full-blown colonies at this stage.
Not really, more like strategic commercial hubs along the coast, places to trade gold, ivory, and tragically, increasingly enslaved Africans, and also vital spots for ships to resupply on the long journey south.
It was a slow push down Africa then,
Methodical, yeah.
step by step.
Then the big breakthrough. 1488, Bartolome Diaz makes it around the southern tip. He apparently called it the Storm Cape.
Can't blame him.
Right. But the Portuguese king, John II, he saw the potential immediately, renamed it the Cape of Good Hope of reaching Asia.
Clever PR move. And did it pay off?
Took another 10 years, but yes. 1498, Vasco da Gama finally reaches Calicut in India. That was huge. Suddenly, they had direct sea access to the pepper trade, challenging the established Arab merchants.
But it wasn't smooth sailing from there, was it? I remember reading his first trip wasn't that profitable.
No, the initial haul was disappointing. It seemed the local rulers weren't just going to roll out the red carpet for Portuguese traders, so da Gama came back a few years later.
And this time he wasn't asking nicely.
Definitely not. He returned with an armed fleet, about 20 ships, bombarded Calicut, used force to secure a cargo of pepper, spices, jewels. It set a precedent.
A much more aggressive approach.
And it worked, in their terms. By the mid-1500s, Portugal had something like 50 of these factorages dotted all the way from West Africa to Japan. They were trading Asian goods back to Europe, but also, importantly, trading between different parts of Asia, a massive network.
This is fascinating stuff. And if you at home are finding this look at how global trade and power dynamics shifted useful, maybe take a second now to hit like, subscribe, and perhaps leave us a comment. Let us know what other historical turning points you'd like us to tackle.
So, while Portugal was building this maritime network eastwards, Spain took a different tack, didn't they?
Right, they went west, starting, famously, with Christopher Columbus in 1492.
And Columbus, of course, sailed west convinced he'd find Indy. He landed in the Caribbean, but thought he was in the East Indies right up until the end, didn't he?
He did. It took others, like Amerigo Vespucci, writing about it being a truly new world for that reality to sink in. Hence, America.
And Spain's strategy there was fundamentally different from Portugal's factorages. They weren't just setting up trading posts.
No, Spain went for full colonization. Conquest. Think of the conquistadores, literally conquerors.
Like Hernán Cortés taking down the Aztec Empire in Mexico, or Francisco Pizarro defeating the Incas in Peru. Their primary goal: gold, silver, huge amounts of it.
And the conquests themselves, incredibly violent.
Brutal. The Spanish had steel weapons, swords, some firearms, which the indigenous populations lacked. But honestly, the biggest factor, the most devastating, European diseases.
Smallpox, measles, influenza.
Exactly. Things the indigenous populations had no immunity to. The death tolls were catastrophic, far exceeding deaths in battle. It effectively cleared the way for Spanish control over vast territories.
So after conquest, how did Spain manage these huge new lands?
They set up colonial governments, ruled directly from Spain. Critically, they relied heavily on forced indigenous labor duangerbide, often justified, or at least moderated on paper, by efforts to convert people to Christianity.
And they did find the wealth they were looking for.
Oh, yes, especially silver. The discovery of the massive silver mine at Potosi in modern Bolivia was a game changer. Huge quantities of silver were shipped back to Spain regularly on the so-called Silver Fleet.
Which became a famous target for pirates, right?
Absolutely. A very tempting target sailing across the Atlantic.
So looking back at this whole era, the consequences were just immense, weren't they? Truly world-changing.
Completely. You've got the world map literally redrawn. Europeans circumnavigated the globe. Christianity spread massively. A global economy starts to form with the Dutch, French, and English eventually jumping in too.
But also the violent destruction of ancient, powerful empires like the Aztecs and Incas, and the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade forcing millions of Africans to the Americas. It's a really mixed and often tragic legacy.
Definitely. And it leaves us with a thought, perhaps for you listening. European impact was swift and overwhelming in the Americas. But in Asia, initially, it was much more limited, despite Portugal's network.
So the question is,
How did those two starting strategies, Portugal's coastal factorage versus Spain's land colonization and conquest, how did that initial difference shape everything that came after? The global power struggles, the empires. It all kind of stems from those early choices, doesn't it? Something to think about.